Or excuse me, good morning, sorry.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. I'm glad to be joined here with Councilor Hogan, Councilor Green, Councilor Monto, President Hudson, Councilor Majola, Councilor Allen, the Commissioners of Water, also our City Auditor. We would like to start our meeting with the 2024 budget for Department of Water. So take us away.
Good morning. I'm Joseph Haywell, Commissioner of Water. I'm also here with Beth Smith, Management Analyst for our department. I'm a licensed engineer for the state of New York, and I've been in the water industry for about 20 years now. So I'd like to take a few moments, I think I've done this a few years in a row now, but just to give the council a quick history of our department, overview of responsibilities, and look at the previous year and the upcoming year. So a quick history, and I'll try to be quick. I know we got a half hour, and I might talk too long. If I do, just
keep it short, sir.
I will.
Pretty bulky, Joe.
I know, that's why I'm going to try and talk fast. If I talk too fast, let me know. All right, so our department's been supplying water to the city for since the 1850s. Skinny-Atlas Lake became the single water source for the city in 1894. I think our system's pretty unique because it's all gravity fed from the lake down to the city. There's no pumps pumping the water from the lake. So it's pretty unique in that aspect of it. Through that, we have 3 conduits that run from the lake to the city, 2 30-inch, 1 36-inch. The first 2 were built when the lake was put online. The third one was built over a series of decades as water supply demand increased. We serve several municipalities along our conduits, including the village and town of Skinny-Atlas, Jordan Elbridge, and we supply Aqua's West Hill District, along with portions of DeWitt. So again, much of our infrastructure for our water system is 75 to 125 years old. This infrastructure includes 50 miles of transmission mains, 500 miles of distribution mains, 5,500 hydrants, 7,500 valves, 9 pumping stations, 19 gatehouses along the conduits, 2 UV ultraviolet light chlorination facilities here in the city, and 5 water storage facilities. For now, it will go down to 4, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. All these components in our system are repaired and maintained by our staff. They take great pride in the system, as do we, performing these repairs and being able to maintain all of our water within the city. We also have a robust watershed protection program for Skinny-Atlas Lake. This program consists of sampling the lake water for bacteria, chemicals, turbidity, and water quality. We work closely with the soil and water conservation districts surrounding the lake to maintain and improve our watershed and also foster environmental stewardship with best management practices with the farmers and the communities around there to maintain our filtration avoidance waiver. So if it works, there's a PowerPoint behind you, Councilor Green, but to that side of the room. There's an extra one, there you go. So for a quick review of fiscal year 23, over the last 5 years, we've been making good progress with investments into our water system. We've invested approximately $20 million in capital projects for improvements while successfully securing about $11 million in grants. So that covers about 57% of our costs.
Can I ask if ARPA is part of that equation?
It is.
To what amount?
We received $10 million for ARPA funding.
Okay.
Actually, I take that back. ARPA is not part of that. $11 million in grants. So that's ARPA's in addition to that.
So 11 plus 10.
Correct.
Is 21.
Correct.
But you said 20 million.
Some of it hasn't progressed all the way through yet.
Okay. Thanks.
So, fiscal year 23, we have designed replacements for the Brookford, Guilford, Westminster pump station, along with water main replacements and lead service replacements. That project's going to be coming out the fall of this year. We've also designed the Mosley pump station replacement along with water main and lead service replacements. I'll get to a few more details of that one coming up. along with the Skaneateles Creek Weir Improvement Project. Now, the Skaneateles Creek Weir is what we use to measure the amount of flow we release from Skaneateles Lake into the creek, which is mandated by our filtration avoidance waiver. We have to maintain during the summer months 6 million gallons per day, and in the winter months about 4. Some of the other improvements we've done over the past year is our SCADA system upgrade. SCADA is a supervisory control and data acquisition system. So this monitors all of our operations of remote facilities that we have connected, such as the water storage tanks, some of the pump stations, the chlorination facilities, and the facilities at the lake, chlorination and fluoride. We have several projects in construction right now, which is the water main replacement and lining on West Genesee Street, which I'll give a few more details about that in a minute. The Brighton Ave pump station and water main replacement, that should be wrapping up by the end of June. And the East Colvin Street water main improvements, which coincides with engineering's East Colvin Street project, along with the New York State DOT's 81 project. So the Brighton Ave pump station and water main replacement, this is to replace a pump station that was built in 1961. As part of the project, we replaced 3,000 feet of ductile iron water main, 12-inch main, and we've decommissioned the Lafayette Reservoir. So that's why I said earlier we have 5 storage facilities going down to 4. We're removing the Lafayette Reservoir because it's a remote facility and has historically been on the Department of Health's watch list for issues in the sense of it's a small facility in chlorination and no backup supply. So as part of this project, we've also established a connection to the South Branch by Aqua, which can backfeed the system in case the pump station needs to go down for maintenance. So currently it's now feeding off of the PRV stations off of the South Branch while the pump station is finally getting wired up and connected to be put into service.
Can I ask you a quick question about the
Yes.
ID1 Colvin? You said the Colvin project is going to include ID1
So we're
considerations with the
coordinating with the DOT and engineering department on the East Colvin Street project that they're doing and the new East Colvin Street off-ramp that the DOT is proposing.
Right, which isn't going to happen for a few years yet. So
Correct.
how does this project that you're doing currently, are you going to stall some of it? Or
So what we are doing is, based on their anticipated design, we are building up to a certain point, where then we'll provide them a connection. So once they are ready to do their work, they can connect into our system, and then it'll be ready to go.
Okay, so we all know what's going to happen, but in the event it doesn't come down, the work that you're doing, it'll just be a pipe that doesn't turn on.
Yeah, it'll be a short stub of pipe that is just there for their connection. Everything else, if that does not happen, which
Okay,
hard to
it
say.
will happen.
Everything else
Just-
will stay as is.
Okay.
So the SCADA system upgrade is allowing us a better visual on our operations and how we maintain our storage facilities, our pump stations, and everything mechanically controlled. As we are providing these upgrades to pump stations, we are putting them into our SCADA system because not all of our facilities are reading back to our department. They are remote read. We have to go out and actually physically look at them and take measurements and readings to make sure that they're functioning properly. This will allow everything to come back to one platform that we can monitor the system as a whole and make any adjustments or improvements or look at anything that might be happening out in the system and get a heads up before something catastrophic happens.
So which brings me to maybe this question, which I don't know. Is there a part of your department that you have outsourced at all?
No.
No, it's all in. Okay.
So part of the reason for the SCADA upgrades is that our radio platform was discontinued in 2017. There are several radios that experience routine communication failures because they're old, and limited facilities we're able to see remotely. Also, the PLCs, which are the programmable logic controllers in our facilities, we did a survey and we found out that they were obsolete at this point in time. So as part of a big facility upgrade, that's what we're looking at, is upgrading our radio system, upgrading these PLCs as we upgrade each facility, along with the pump stations. That most of these pump stations that we manually read do not have anything electronically controlled in them. So, water main improvements and lead service replacements along West Genesee Street. So this project is currently ongoing. We'll probably wrap up our component of it, and then we'll let the engineering department take over their component this summer. But as part of the project, we've replaced about 3,000 feet of 16-inch water main. We've added 30 new valves into the system. We replaced 68 lead services we found on the street, and we are going to be performing approximately 3,000 feet of lining of 20-inch water main. The lining of the 20-inch water main is the same process we did along Montgomery Street back in 21, which allowed us not to dig up the street and replace everything. We were able to just line it and keep that existing main, reuse that existing main with the lining, so that way we don't have more costs of restoration than necessary.
So basically, as far as patching goes after all this is sort of it's a temporary type patch, basically.
For the lining?
Yeah, well, for all the work that you're doing on West Genesee Street.
Patching mean the roadway or patching
Well,
the
when they
pipeline?
dig in, they have to patch the roadway
Yes.
afterwards, right?
Yep, so engineering...
So I mean, because it's sort of rugged. It's,
Correct.
You know, it's 13th century France, you know, basically.
Correct.
You know, so is it going to be a smooth transition with engineering?
Yes. Same contractor working for us is
I
working for
like the way
engineering.
you said that. Yes, of course it is. So it will. Because
There's no contractor conflicts because the same contractor is doing both.
yeah.
So you can coordinate his own efforts in making that
Oh, so it's, what's it, JJ Lane?
correct.
Okay, so they're coordinating all
Yes.
that. Because it doesn't, I mean, the patchwork is pretty bad.
Yeah, I know
doing
they're going to be, I don't know their exact schedule for paving, but they are going to be trying to get to paving a component of it this year.
Piece by piece.
The blowouts, right?
Yeah, because we haven't had any in there yet on Genesee Street this year.
Good point.
We're lining the bigger main from Geddes to Plum. We've already installed all the new valves in each intersection. Engineering's project is including new water main and services from State Fair Boulevard to Eureka. We just installed 500 feet from Lowell Street to Lowell Street, and we also did new water main and replaced all the lead services on the last 2 blocks. Was it Myrtle to Willis?
That's what I was concerned
Yeah.
about, because I know that down by Myrtle, it was a major blowout, it kept blowing. And I know down by Aldi's, they had a major blowout.
So all of that water main in those sections have been replaced with, it was cast iron from 1894, I believe. So it's all been replaced with new ductile iron with locking gaskets, and any lead services found, which the last 3 blocks was all lead services have been replaced.
So
Into the
when you
meter.
replace parts of this, which you're replacing quite a bit, put stress on the other parts of the system, so we've been luckily having that.
No, actually, hopefully
doesn't?
with this, because that's at the tail end, we've been able to isolate block by
good,
block
okay.
and minimize it. But with the new system in place with, you know, ductile iron, which has a little more give to it than cast iron, and the locking gaskets, it'll be a much more secure system, let's call it.
Well, I'll be looking for that paving.
Paving,
Or to it.
I think their plan is to go from west to east, but I haven't seen the schedule yet, so.
So what's the,
West to east would be perfect.
what's the time frame? So like when you guys did Colvin Street, Colvin isn't getting paved, I guess, for another couple of months. But so we've suffered for the last like 4 months. Colvin Street is absolutely ridiculous, like driving up and down now. I understand that we're waiting for the pavement process to happen. I understand that, but the general public doesn't. And over the last couple of months, like, it is absolutely terrible. Like, it's probably the worst job I've ever seen and felt while I'm driving home.
So I know there's been a lot of utility companies down in that stretch. National Grid's been down there. I think Verizon's been down there. We did a couple intersections, and that's it. So long runs on Colvin Street, other than from the 81 west side of 81 westbound, we replaced, I think there was 15 lead surfaces in there. We've replaced all of those.
So what's usually the time frame? So like with the West Genesee one, when the water department is done, then the actual pavement process is gonna happen like months after. Like there's no other way for you guys to coordinate that where as soon as you get done, the paving happens? Like it has to be a better way.
Yeah, so I'll take a look at those intersections. I thought they went down and restored it for the winter because it was last fall. I know engineering's East Colvin Street project is going to start up this May, I think. So I'm not sure what other work has to happen down there as part of that project. I know they're doing curbing and sidewalks and stuff like that. So, but I can check on that schedule.
Corey's here.
She's
got lots of answers, I think. Come on, Corey.
Morning, counselors. It's been a long day already. Chief Operating Officer Corey Dunham. So dig once is just it's a lot longer process, as we found, with all the disruption downtown when we did the dig once projects in downtown Syracuse. It takes a lot longer, and it's disruptive, but we do. We are operating under the short-term pain, long-term gain that, and also with that in mind, always trying to make sure that we're trying to work as closely as we can with the utilities to minimize the disruptions that we have, knowing that currently, although I am reviewing the materials that Councilor Schultz has sent us, we have, we're somewhat limited in being able to control utilities and how quickly they work, and but still exploring ways to better coordinate. But dig once, it certainly is a lot easier for a lot of folks to just let the city come through and pave, and then they just dig it up as they want, because there's less disruption for everybody and it's a lot shorter, but that's also really horrible for the pavement. So,
or even if the messaging could be put out there, like when you're getting ready to build a new building, you have a sign that says like coming soon or something. Right. So even if people in the area knew, yes, you guys don't have, this isn't the end of the process, like it's coming soon. Like I said, I know only because I'm involved in it. But like my neighbors and the people that drive the street, they don't know that it's coming. Yes. And so they're calling like, oh my God, I ran down the street and this happened to my car. And I'm like, well, it's going to get paved. Right. But it's hard to explain the whole process to them. Absolutely. Especially when I don't have a date either.
No, I mean, when the work that we were doing on Brighton, I was up in Jamesville coming down into the city, and I was, man, this road is really torn up. It's a good thing this isn't us, because this is the town of Onondaga, right? This isn't us. And then I talked to Joe, and I was like, oh, that is the city. That is us. So even myself, who's listening to these projects all day long, still sometimes lose sight. I was like, man, whoever's doing this. But no, you're absolutely right, Counselor. And actually, the mayor mentioned to me, I think last week or the week before, of especially now that we have our new sign shop down at DPW, to try and increase the amount of signage that we put up to explain to people what we're doing, particularly for these Dig Once projects, so that people understand we're working with National Grid, we're working with Verizon, this is funded, whether it's funded through ARPA, whether it's funded by the city, to try and give some context to people of what's happening here, why it's good, and to the degree that we can on a permanent sign, how long we think it's going to take.
Because I think I saw the newsletter come out. I mean, isn't that something that could be put into the newsletter?
Yes, I mean it's difficult for these long-term projects, because we'll issue an initial press release, and if people didn't see it then a month and a half later, then they're not going to know what's going on. Especially Colvin, we got and Brighton, those projects just took months and months and months. So if you missed the first press release when we announced it, you're not going to see it, which is why I think signage makes a lot of sense, because it's also getting to the people who are on site and experiencing it firsthand.
And social media as well. Right,
correct.
So do you guys have a social media page?
Through the city, we have our social media page where we announce when projects are starting. But again, I don't know,
even if you put up there, work still to be completed, right, Colvin and whatever, you can slap that on the social media page, and we all have social media and we can share it.
Understood. That's a good idea.
What about, since you mentioned that we got new signage?
New sign shop.
I have seen it around either on a highway or if you go to the suburbs somewhere where you have these digital signage that state what date a project is, and it's just there, you know.
Yes, and we do, I know engineering has used them sometimes, right? On Brighton they used,
We
when they
used
were
it
doing
on
the
Brighton.
deck, the bridge project on
Yep, they did it
Brighton
on the
were
bridge
using?
deck, and we did it for the water main replacement.
Yeah,
There was a sign saying work to commence like a week before it started.
yeah. So you're right, Counselor, maybe we could explore using those more. We have used them sometimes, but for these long-term projects, maybe a little bit more
I
of it.
saw the signs, not for this.
Right.
But they had some lawn signs up on Genesee talking about the sidewalk. When I saw them.
Oh, they hadn't been stolen yet? That's
They were in the
great.
middle of the street.
Yeah. Yes, no, agreed. I think it's a very valid point.
Thanks, Corey.
I'm just a little confused. Commissioner, the Brighton, with the Brighton and Calvin we were just talking about, you said that is some of it has a part of our program, or is it some of it just utilities cutting into the street?
For Brighton?
Yeah, Brighton or Calvin or
So
whatever.
Brighton was our project. It's a pump station replacement along with the water main and any services on the southern end of that run. I know engineering has a project coming up, not this year, I think it's next year, to do mill and pave basically on Brighton like they're going to do on Genesee Street. So we got out ahead of that one because that water main, we had about 15 to 20 breaks on in a 10-year stretch. And we were back there.
What I'm trying to get at is J.J. Lane, which is our contractor.
Correct.
I'm just wondering if there's any provisions in the contract that when we RFP things maybe the next time we use them, we can have some sort of time limit or anything like that. Have we explored anything like that?
Yeah, we usually put time constraints on a lot of our projects. Like Brighton has extended itself because the pump station took a little bit longer to acquire. We don't even have the backup generator, a delivery date for that yet, and the contractor ordered that last March.
I know it's a tough time.
So
a lot of moving
it's
parts.
hard.
It's predicated
Yep.
on other people, so.
So a lot of that's hard because materials are getting, supply is getting better, but some things are just way out there.
We've been talking about Brighton for the last 2 years. It's tough, man. And I drive on there all the time, and it feels like a third world country road up there.
And if the DOT starting one of their contracts, I think their contract 2 involves Brighton and the Brighton bridges and the
As long as
on-off
we're making
ramp.
every effort to facilitate what Councilor Allen and Councilor.
Yeah, we're trying to get everyone at the table. It's hard. Whoever has to get stuff in the road, now's the time to get it and do it so we can pave it and be done with it. Because I don't like going back to paved roads, but. All right.
Last one, Commissioner, so based on the replacement here, so these water main take up what, about 50 years life to get a good one out of them? 50 years?
Yeah, I mean, you average a 50-year life. We've been, I don't want to say living on borrowed time a little bit, but the ductile iron will last a little bit longer because of the coating that's being put on it and the lining inside of it. So we'll get probably more than 50 years out of it.
Okay, nice PowerPoint, right? But I just need to ask you some
Go for
questions
it.
out the book. Okay. I'm looking on page 253 and 256. So you have 2 watershed quality coordinators?
Let me see. 253.
253 and 256.
I'll say that again. We have 2 watershed inspectors.
Quality control coordinator right there.
Oh, okay.
Watershed.
We have,
Okay, one is.
We have one.
I just see it. One is in Skinny Atlas.
yeah, our watershed quality coordinators in Skinny Atlas. Our sanitarian is in Skinny Atlas.
What? Okay, so then I am looking at it right. Because on 253, I see a watershed quality coordinator.
Yes.
Then on 256, I see another watershed quality coordinator. So is it 1 or is it 2?
We should only have 1.
It's two different pay grades. Too.
Right, but he's still saying it should only be 1.
Yeah.
Ooh, sorry. Yeah, we only have one watershed quality coordinator down in Skinny Alice. So I'm not sure.
So then we have another one in the city? Because there's only one watershed, right?
Correct.
Okay, because I'm looking at the one for, at a grade 15M, go up to 74. Then the other one is at a 16M, go up to 85. So I'm trying to understand this.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I didn't see that they're listed twice.
So where do they belong?
Skinny Alice.
Okay, all right.
Then also on page 249, during the budget and personnel administration, where it says the Common Council actions requested. What exactly is that?
249.
Yes. Well, the budget and personnel administration. It says activity indicator, Common Council action requested.
So that would be all of our council requests.
Oh, the council request?
Yes.
Okay, all right, just double checking. Well, if we get any special privileges there, that's all.
No.
Don't be saying nothing like that.
I'm not. It was clarification.
All right, I'm sorry, that's all I had.
Any other questions on a line item on the budget?
What about grants? Do you write your own grants?
Yes, we apply for all of our grants. We do them in-house.
Okay, so how's that work? You write them and then you run them through the grants office, or do you just do them?
No, we just do them in our office here.
Okay. Who handles that, Beth?
Beth and myself.
Okay. And you say like 11 million you got 12?
Yes.
Oh, and is that just last year?
In the last 5 years.
Last 5 years.
So we're waiting on, we're hoping to see something come out from the intended use plan. The last amendment was finalized in April. So we're waiting to see what comes out of that. The two items we applied for that one was our lead service inventory request and lead service replacement, which is, lead service inventory is a requirement of the new Department of Health and EPA regulations that's due October 2024. So that's some of the new constraints that we're seeing put on utility providers, especially water utility providers, to make sure you have an inventory of every service in your serving area, private and public side.
So, and you, when you're going for grants, do you share that information with the mayor's office or
Yes.
the other departments so they know? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, a little difficulties this morning. So I'm not sure if you answered this question. If you did, just say you answered it, and I'll find out from fellow colleagues. What are the projects? Are you doing any projects around the creeks? Any water restoration, any pipes or anything around the creeks?
Around creeks. So we have a couple of projects that are in design along our conduits. One is in Camillus at Shove Park. We have 3 conduits that run through that park and under the creek. The creek bed is starting to erode, so we're getting in there to do some mitigation to shore up that erosion in the creek bed, which is now at the top of our pipes. So that's probably going to be upcoming in the next, probably next construction season, I hope.
But none of the creeks like in the city?
In the city, a lot of our stuff is underneath the bridge. It hangs on the bridge. It doesn't go underneath the creek. So most of our stuff is between the girders on the bridge, such as Tallman Street Bridge that was just redone. I got a new pipe hanging up there. Like Court Street, Bear Street, that's going over 81, everything's hanging on the bridge, along with the Midler Street.
Well, I'm asking this because I know we talked to engineer, and I know you guys work sort of side to side with certain projects. So like the valley area with the water issue, is that something that will fall in between you engineer and working together?
What's the water issue?
With the creek, like that, the flooding, the drainage.
Yeah, so I think everything over the creek, like I said, we're on the bridge, so it won't impact us. It won't erode the creek bed and get down to our mains because we're already up above. So, but if there is anything that we have that's running along the creek side, we would definitely work together with them to make sure it's all shored up.
So when there's floods, so say for instance in a neighborhood, we realize there's no drainage, right? So I know certain neighborhoods last year, you guys were right on it and put drainage in the grounds because there needed to be certain drainages and there wasn't. Who handle? I mean, so you guys work with that, but who else participates with you guys when you guys put those drainage? Engineering?
A lot of the drainage structures are done by DPW and engineering. So if we had any issues with a water main break and flooding, we would contact DPW and say, all right, there's a low spot here, it's just collecting. Is there any drainage basin over here that can be cleaned out? If not, one should probably get installed if this is a routine problem of water collecting with snow runoff or anything like that.
Thank you.
So I have a question. Obviously, the water infrastructure, you told us, is very old and it needs to be redone. What's the timeline look like as far as percentage complete and what we have ahead of us still?
That's a good question.
I know it's an ongoing thing.
It is an ongoing thing. It's a daunting task because we have so much old infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of replacement and upgrades, such as lining. We are trying to budget and manage the most we can with applying for grants. We seem to be getting a mile or two of water main replacement or upgrade every year. That puts a little dent in our over 500 miles of distribution main. I think we'll see a huge impact for the better as the 81 project becomes a reality. There'll be a lot of large transmission mains impacted by them that'll have to be replaced at their cost.
Great.
So
11 million ARPA grants and 2 years of rate increases. What do the next few years look like as far as rate increases?
That's a great question, which leads me into some of our stuff in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So to wrap it up, some of the improvements we made is over 150 lead services replaced, 65 hydrants replaced, 56 valves replaced, 85 repaired. We had about 340 breaks. Some of those minor ones were leaks or service leaks that I didn't classify as a break itself on a main. And I think we repaired about 150 road cuts. So some of the challenges we are facing with our upcoming budget, similar to last year, and which most municipalities are facing, is the rising cost of materials. So you can see on the chart, actually the printouts don't show both charts, but on the screen you'll see the valve costs per size and how they've gone up every year and the percentage that they've gone up. Pipe costs, similar. You see an increase as the size, obviously as the size gets bigger, so does the cost. But you see a huge increase in the more routine sizes of 8 and 12 and 16. The other item, which is really kind of staggering, is our chlorine costs, which are going up just about doubling. So last year we spent about $500,000 on chlorine costs. To date, this year we've already spent $955,000. So
why can't we make the salt happen sooner?
we're working on it.
Okay.
We got our preliminary basis of design report completed, and now it's getting into the next component of design phase so we can get that moving. But that's a coordinated effort we're doing with the Village of Skinny Atlas because both of our facilities need chlorine. We're their chlorine provider, first shot provider, basically. So we're trying to build a facility that can manage both of our systems because we don't have enough footprint on our parcel there in Skinny Atlas to do the facility we need to. So we're combining efforts with the village to go after this on-site generation facility, which would minimize our concern of getting chlorine deliveries on time, because all we would need is salt to be delivered, where then we can create it on site in Skinny Atlas to maintain our system and theirs.
Is this the same as the pools?
I think it's similar, just on a much larger scale.
So do we combine the two when we need it?
The ordering of salt,
And chlorine, yes.
yeah, I mean, we could. I'm not sure what their system entails or what they're exactly doing or how much they need, what their demand is. But that's something we can look into.
A better price if we were able to do it in a bigger bulk, right?
Right, I mean, we got a pretty good chunk of salt coming once this design gets completed. I'm not sure what their demand is for salt, but we can look into that if they can bid off of our contracts or.
So Corey, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, I can.
Salt, chlorine, all of that stuff. If it's the same that we're using in our pools,
Sure.
why aren't we combining and ordering?
I'll find out. I mean, the conversion to salt water for our pools is relatively new, so I'll touch base with Commissioner LaFave in her last week and see if there's an opportunity for us to collaborate.
And my understanding is that when we had this discussion last year, right, there was going to be an effort to really, right? Do I remember that correctly?
Madam President asked that before.
Right. There was an effort to be made to try to consolidate ordering of this.
Okay, I'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in the basis of design phase, so we haven't even really put a lot of drawings together to know what,
So
capacity
let me
it
ask you
is.
this, though, because I'm gonna go a little bit deeper than that. So if that's the case, I know the county, I'm not sure if they're doing the salt water, they're still using the chlorine, but we're doing things off of county bid, correct? So is there a way that if we're gonna do a county bid for chlorine that we could all bundle? Yes, no, maybe?
I don't know.
What the county would use, because they don't operate pools. I don't know what the
Right.
county would be using chlorine for.
Okay.
I mean, they have their water plant, but they also
Because if
use
we're
a different
in a
amount.
position of where we're looking for money constantly, I would think that we would do a bigger bundle, as
Sure.
Progressive says, and get our biggest bang for our
Yeah,
buck.
it's definitely worth finding out whether there's opportunities there.
Corey,
Then, let me, before
go
you
ahead,
go,
go ahead.
and before I move on, then I'm gonna be quiet. You talked about the grants that you write, right? So at this table, we've been talking a lot about trying to see all of the grants put together because everybody's working in a silo. So is there any kind of a way that we can attach you to the grant department, or they know what you're doing, they know what police doing, they know what everybody's doing, we're not willy-nilly all over the place?
We've let the grants department know what we're going after, what's coming up.
Okay, so she has an
Yep.
idea of what's on the table.
Correct.
Corey, don't go nowhere.
Okay. And then one more for you, Joe.
Yes.
You said number of remotes installed. How many more remotes has to be installed throughout the city?
Remotes.
The remote readers for
Oh, for meters, I think we're about 90 to 95% complete.
at 2,100?
Thanks. Yeah, meter prices, I found out actually just last week. Meter prices are up a little bit, but the lead time on meters for typical residential 5/8 meters are now 11 months out. So,
Okay, so it was just 2,100 this year. Okay.
Joe, on this chart, is it in terms of dollars overall? So you said it went up $900,000 over the 2-year time period. Is
so we went from 500,000 to 900,000
that just this year?
from last year to this year.
So it was down almost below 300,000 2 years ago.
Correct.
Now we're
Yeah, because our
900,000.
what we were purchasing in 2001 was, what, 30 cents a gallon, and now our
It
cost
tripled
is
in price.
Yeah,
Whereas
now
that's kind of lost somewhere because you show the percent every year,
Right.
over multiple years. Anyways, whatever. A lot of money.
But it's the pricing is every 6 months now. They won't hold the contract because they can't hold the price. So every 6 months, we're seeing an increase.
And it has an expiration date, right? If you order in bulk, you can't just house it.
Right.
So, question. I don't know if it's a you or a Corey or a Rod question. So, I see they hiding behind that pole right there. I see both of them today. Just something I would like to throw out there. I think our departments are doing a great job, right? But one thing I'm recognizing throughout all the budgets that it seems like the connection of communication amongst all the departments. So where do we guys come together to say, okay, Madam President mentioned that a lot about the grants, but also like with the water department and everything, how synergy, so how that we're not duplicating and we can utilize together, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different, from a construction perspective, we have monthly Dig Once meetings where we have water, we have engineering, we have DPW, we have sewers, everybody there to talk about what projects we have coming up and what we can coordinate. I think in terms of purchasing, I'm going to look to our director of purchasing for, if there are opportunities for us to coordinate purchasing. I mean, I think in general we do pretty good in terms of supplies, but and then also with grants, I think that goes to, and I don't know if research has had their budget hearing yet, but I think that kind of goes to a lot of the technology needs. I'm not overly familiar with research's plans, but I know that's been an effort with Janet and Greg and Frank to see if there's a way to better track grants rather, because right now I think a lot of it is tracked, over email traffic, and you're searching for that email from Joe where he was talking about this DASNY grant, whereas if we had everything consolidated in one system, I think it would make Janet's life a lot easier, and then better coordination with the department. So a lot of it will lie in technology. We just need to upgrade a lot of the tools and systems that we have.
And is there any way, Corey, that when we do the budget, right, that at some point on the page they can put down the grant amount? Everybody is doing grants.
Yeah, it could be part of the narrative that we include in next year's budget, right, in terms of the budget indicators of, how much grant funding we've either applied for or received. I mean, the water department is probably, one of the top departments in terms of applications and receiving grants. So that's a credit to Joe and his team, but I think that makes sense to highlight that.
See, I think what we want to avoid, as we've mentioned before, is not applying, some departments applying for the same type of grant. Like Joe just mentioned, lead replacement. Now, somebody that could be under a category, NBG could be applying for a grant.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's some coordination because Joe's is the pipes that the water comes through, whereas with code enforcement, and usually the funding for that is specific to, EFC or agencies as opposed to lead paint, which is going to...
DASNY and all that. I mean, there have some real general...
Agreed. Yeah, there is always room for better coordination, no doubt.
I wonder, do you meet with... And just having been around administrations for a lot of years, you meet with all the commissioners at the same, are there designees? When you get all together?
I mean, for Dig Once meetings, Joe's on that meeting, Mary Robeson's on that meeting, Neil, what's that?
Is it a Zoom meeting?
Yeah, it's a Zoom meeting. Yeah.
Getting all the head people.
Right.
I know over the years, sometimes all of a sudden you get a designee comes in.
Right.
Can't make a decision unless he talks to them.
Right. And then I also, we all get together, and then I also have individual meetings with each one of the commissioners that I work closely with.
Corey, I see that too, like with the vehicles, police and fire. Everyone's ordering stuff. It would just seem like it would be like one streamline, even at your different departments, but I mean, one streamline of ordering. Yeah,
I mean, I think the introduction of Rich DeVesti as kind of the director of fleet operations, he's obviously located at DPW, but his responsibility lies in coordinating DPW, water, parks, and so again, it's a point well taken that there's always improved coordination, but I think having Rich in charge of the entire city's fleet has helped us to, water doesn't need this vehicle anymore, they need something else, DPW just ordered it, now they don't need it, we're going to give it to water and take water's vehicle to fit a need that DPW has, so there has been better coordination, but always room for improvement, especially with public safety.
Always at the bottom of the line, I'll tell you that.
And let me just ask one quick question, right? Because I know we do a lot of ordering off of the county purchasing. So is there any way, Tim, this is up in your ball field, is there any way that we could actually know what we purchase from the county?
Well, I'm sure we know, but
No, you know, we don't know.
Yeah. Well, I would say one of the goals of all the procurement changes we're making is the way we have a 5-year capital plan, we want to have a 5-year procurement plan. And I think a part of that is looking back at the most recent 5 years to say, what have we bought, who's bought it, how much, how often do we buy it, how do we need it, and then making a plan for what the next 5 years are so we can say, like, for example, we're definitely buying chlorine in parks and chlorine in water, and intuitively I don't necessarily think it's the same product, so I don't know that we would be ordering it, but maybe, but that's where I think that type of question could be asked in the review of this type of 5-year procurement plan, where, like, what are we buying?
And stuff like that, do we go by the county bid?
Well, for larger purchases, I think we're living off state contracts where they have agreed prices, so even bigger than the county. Like, the county is also using the state contracts to purchase vehicles. So there's a lot of piggybacking in contracting, where if something has gone through a competitive process and it matches, people will try to use what has the best price, which is usually the biggest buyer. So,
So we go
this
off
is
the
where it
state and
gets.
the county bid.
Yeah, and we can go off of another municipality that had a fair competitive process, if need be.
That is a great idea, what the budget director is, coordinating it like that.
Which one? 5-year plan?
Procurement of vehicles.
Right.
What about the procurement?
Have it in one, where you're in charge of, are you in charge of it? You're talking?
No, Rich is largely doing all the central ordering, but I'm corralling, I'm kind of like saying to each department, please identify, have Rich identify your entire fleet, the condition, the expenses, and have a plan of replacement such that it is, we need 5 new trucks this year, 4 next year, and so that you have like a 5-year plan, and so that the capital plan reflects the actual replacement strategy, and that's where Rich provides like the capacity for the department to actually do that, whereas I think before most departments lacked the capacity. Maybe not fire. Fire's pretty aggressive in their replacement strategy, but like it helps to have somebody central with saying, let's look at the age of your fleet. When should you be replacing them?
So there'll be a
and actually helping
definitive
them do
decision
it.
whether an aged vehicle from the Parks Department is going to be replaced as opposed to a brand, like a new vehicle from like the Fire Department.
Right. I mean, there would be a plan
That's
based
a good
on the
idea.
data. Yeah.
We're sorry, Joe, we got off.
That's all right. It's always great conversation. So, just to add on to the conversation, we do coordinate with Rich and all of our capital equipment purchases. I actually just met with him last week. We went through what we're looking at, some of the needs we have coming up for the next fiscal year, and we kind of put that schedule together. And there is a, as Tim mentioned, there is a distinction, like for salt purchasing for the parks, I'm not sure, I'm assuming the salt would be the same, but chlorine is definitely different. You cannot use pool chlorine for water disinfection purposes.
Joe, how many vacancies do you have?
I'll have to go back and look because we just acquired some of our vacancies from transfers, but I want to say we have around 10. So.
I won't beleaguer this point anymore than I already have, but I feel the same way about grants as I do about the employee management system. We don't have we can't press a button and say how many people do we have and how many, you know, if I ask how many women work for the city, nobody can tell me that without going to a bunch of different spreadsheets and adding it up. It's the same thing with grants. Yeah, I'm wildly confused as to how we don't have a research department that knows exactly what everybody is applying for and then following it through. That's baffling me. So that's not you, but my statement about
HR is coming up this week.
So Joe, when's the last time you interviewed, when somebody interviewed for one of those 10 positions?
I think we just had an interview a few weeks ago, didn't we?
And how'd that work out? We hire them? Her?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep, I got it.
And Commissioner,
Yes.
on page 253,
253.
when you look at the principal water plane operator
Yep.
at $24, how competitive is that?
The principal plant operator. So
When you compare it to
it's, we have a different requirement for our principal plant operator. We are required to have a B license, where most filtration plants require an A. Since we are one of the last, I think there's us and maybe one or two other municipalities that have a filtration avoidance. It's a little bit different. So it's harder to get a good handle on if that's competitive, because I think the other two places are New York City and San Francisco. So municipality size and everything is quite different, but all the other plant operators in the country are required to have an A license, which has a lot more chemistry to it than what we do.
I guess what I'm going with that is it, are you struggling to fill those, or are you good at the moment?
We're good at the moment. The hardest thing for us is the plant manager. Again, nobody has that B license, and to be eligible for that level, you need at least 10 years experience, and our guys have, I believe, 6, approaching 7, so they can't even sit for the exam to get that license for another several years. So it's getting the requirements. It's not necessarily getting the people, it's meeting the requirements we have to meet.
These are unions, right? They're unions?
Yes.
Quick question about your cybersecurity. Are you doing work with our IT department, or are you a completely separate entity?
No, we're coordinating with our ID department. We have a consultant working on our cybersecurity efforts. This cybersecurity on the PowerPoint is something new we just found out about. 2 weeks ago at the conference, the EPA put out a memo March 3rd. The state is still trying to figure out how they're going to manage those requirements and what to do about it. But we already have a cybersecurity plan in place, and getting these additional SCADA features and security features will help us comply with the deficiencies we found before.
So there's cybersecurity for emails, and then there's cybersecurity for like those remote stations and all the equipment, right?
Yes.
And the two are?
So all of our remote stations that are on SCADA cannot be connected to our city network.
Okay.
There has to be a degree of separation, so somebody can't get in through the internet and get to that. A lot of our remote sites are done through radio communication, two-way radio, so it's much more secure than the internet.
Okay.
So, Commissioner, it feel like the summer is going to be really hot, right? And once that happens,
I hope so.
Counselor, you got a degree in meteorology or what?
Hope it's not snowing in June, but you never know. Never rule it out, right?
with that happening, you start to deal with water, algae, and all of that. What's the plan? Is there a plan in place to?
Yes, we have a strategic plan in place we put together in 2018 about what we do, when we do it, and how frequently we do it, depending on the sampling that we do. So we have that in place. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, for the sake of time, is there one more point that you would like to stress to the council while you have us before we end this?
Really quickly, it's just that, one of the big expenses we're seeing coming up is going to be this lead copper rule inventory. We're estimating about $2 million to prepare it, because we have to prepare and present it to the State Health Department. That's one of the grants we asked for in the latest IUP. And a lot of these projects that we talked about earlier are going to be coming up for construction this year, and you see these last three that are hopefully bidding this fall are all ARPA projects. So we're going to be spending our ARPA money before the deadline. And that is it. I think if you have any other questions, I'm here for you to ask.
We'll get in contact with you. Thank you.
Remember, your questions get tracked on the reports to the council in this, so.
Anytime you guys got questions, feel free.
All right, thank you. This concludes our meeting here. Thank you.